She was forced into a loveless marriage with a cold billionaire who never even called her by name. For 2 years, Ela Bennett was nothing more than a contract, until one heartbreaking night, she walked away, carrying a secret that could change everything. When Callum Drake returned, he never expected to fight for the woman he once ignored. But was it too late? This story is filled with betrayal, hidden truths, and an unexpected second chance that might just heal 2 shattered hearts. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful African stories. The distant hum of the city outside her penthouse window was the only sound Ela Bennett could hear as she sat on the edge of the bed, her bare feet brushing the cold marble floor. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers over the thick edges of the divorce papers spread out before her. 2 years. 2 years of a marriage she hadn't chosen, forged out of obligation, not love. The ink on her signature was still drying, but the weight of that signature, of what it meant, had already begun to settle in her chest like stone. She had been the dutiful daughter, the one who sacrificed her personal happiness to preserve her family's dwindling legacy. The Bennetts had once been revered, old money and honor. Now they were a name attached to debts, whispered about in private clubs. When the Drakes extended a lifeline, Ela's parents hadn't hesitated. A merger through marriage, they called it. A transaction. And Ela had become part of the price tag. Callum Drake had never asked for a wife, and Ela had never expected him to become a husband. Their wedding had been a spectacle. Photographers, influencers, magazine covers. But their home had been silent, their lives parallel and never intersecting. In 2 years, he had never once called her by her first name. Not when they crossed paths at events, not when he returned home in the middle of the night, the scent of cologne she didn't recognize clinging to his clothes. He had always been polite, cold, distant. Charming to the world, but behind closed doors, Ela may as well have been invisible. She had endured it quietly at first. That was how she had been raised. Endure, smile, be graceful. But silence is a cage, and Ela had grown tired of pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. She had dreams once, of building something real, of being seen. But those dreams had been buried beneath designer gowns and forced dinner parties, until tonight. The elevator chimed. Her heart skipped, panic and resolve warring within her chest. She rose quickly, smoothing down the silk robe wrapped around her waist. The door opened before she could fully prepare herself, and there he was, Callum. After months away, after chasing a woman who wasn't her, he walked in like nothing had happened, like he still lived here. His tailored coat, his confident stride, the slight furrow of confusion on his brow as his eyes landed on her. Then on the papers. "What's this?" he asked, voice low, measured. "I'm done waiting for you to come to your senses," Ela said, steadying her voice. "I want a divorce." He blinked, caught off guard, the mask slipping for the briefest second. "You're serious? I signed them tonight. You don't even have to read them. Just sign, and it's done." Callum stared at her, his jaw tightening. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Yes, I do. I'm asking for freedom. For a life that belongs to me." She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "And it starts tonight." He moved past her, ignoring the papers, heading toward the bar. He poured a drink, the glass clinking against the decanter. "What do you want, Ela? Alimony? The penthouse? You're not even trying to negotiate." "I don't want your money," she replied, voice sharper now. "I want one night, just you and me. No distractions, no lies." He turned slowly, surprised. "Why? Because I need to know who you are, and maybe you need to know who I've become." Her hands were steady now, her spine straight. She was no longer the woman he had left behind. He hesitated, clearly torn. For a moment, silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Then, with a slow nod, he relented. "One night, that's all." Ela nodded back. "That's all I'm asking." And in that moment, something shifted. Not love, not forgiveness, but a spark of truth igniting in the ashes of everything they had never dared to say. The night began with a strange stillness, the kind that settles when 2 people who were once strangers but somehow more decide to stop pretending. Ela sat across from Callum at the kitchen counter, the dim light overhead casting soft shadows on his face. He looked less polished than she remembered, tired, older, maybe even a little worn. His usual cool demeanor seemed tempered by something else tonight. Curiosity, maybe even regret. He poured them each a glass of wine, the crimson liquid swirling like blood in the glass. Isla accepted hers wordlessly. They didn't toast. What was there to celebrate? But they drank, and for a moment it was almost quiet between them. Not the kind of quiet that had filled their marriage like a fog, but the kind that comes before something true is finally said out loud. "You always hated this place," Callum said suddenly, his gaze not meeting hers. "I hated the silence," Isla replied, voice calm. "Not the place." He nodded slowly, then took a sip of wine. "I didn't know how to be someone's husband. Not really." "You didn't try," she said. "That's what hurt the most." There was no venom in her tone, only truth. And for the first time, Callum didn't flinch. He looked at her like he was really seeing her, for the first time since their wedding day. They moved from the kitchen to the living room, a fire flickering in the marble hearth, casting a golden hue across the floor. They talked, haltingly at first, then with more ease, about things they'd never bothered to ask each other. Favorite books, childhood scars, dreams long buried under family pressure. Isla laughed at one of his stories, and the sound caught Callum off guard. He stared at her, amazed that he'd never heard her laugh like that before. Maybe he'd never been listening. As the wine disappeared, so did their barriers. The emotional walls they had carefully built crumbled, brick by brick. Isla curled her legs beneath her on the couch, her robe now replaced by one of his old sweaters. He didn't ask why. She didn't explain. It felt natural, like something that should have happened long ago. Sometime past midnight, the conversation dipped into silence. But it wasn't awkward, it was full of things unsaid but deeply felt. Isla looked at him, her eyes soft but cautious. "Do you regret marrying me?" Callum's jaw tensed. He looked down, then slowly met her gaze. "I regret not trying to know you. I regret treating you like a deal." The air between them thickened. Isla reached for her wine glass again, but then stopped, setting it aside. "We were never meant to fall in love," she said, more to herself than to him. "No," he agreed, "but maybe we were meant to meet." Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared loss, wasted time, but also the flicker of something new. Not love, not yet, but connection. Real, raw, and undeniable. He reached for her hand, not forcefully, not dramatically, just enough for her to know he was there. Her fingers didn't pull away. Later that night, they lay side by side in the massive bed that had once felt colder than any winter storm. No grand gestures, no whispered promises, just quiet breathing and the weight of what had passed between them. Isla didn't sleep much. Her mind replayed every word, every glance. There was no passion in the romantic sense, but there was truth, and maybe that was more powerful. She felt seen, not adored, not desired, just seen. When she finally drifted off, dawn was already beginning to push through the curtains. And when she woke, Callum was still beside her, one arm draped carelessly over his chest, the other brushing the space where her body had been. She slipped out quietly, dressing in silence, folding the sweater and placing it on the bed. She left the signed divorce papers on the nightstand, a red smudge of dry paint, an accident from earlier, from her hospital shift, marking the edge of the sheet. It looked almost like blood, almost like a warning. She didn't look back. And when Callum awoke, groggy and confused, the bed beside him was empty. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on the papers and the smear of red, something inside him twisted. He couldn't explain it, but for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel alone. He felt hollow. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, but Isla Bennett moved through it like a ghost. Days at the hospital bled into nights of silence in her new apartment. She had kept her head down, focused on her work, determined to make her escape from Callum more than just a legal break. It had to be emotional, complete, but nothing about it felt clean, especially not now. 2 weeks after that night, their night, Isla stared down at the small stick in her trembling hand, her breath caught in her chest. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Her body went cold, her heart pounding like it was trying to escape her ribcage. She sank onto the edge of her bathtub, her fingers white around the plastic test. This couldn't be happening. But it was. The night that was supposed to give her closure had rewritten everything. She didn't cry. There was no space for that. Instead, she did what she'd always done. She pushed forward. She told no one, not even her closest colleague. If this child was coming into the world, it would come on her terms. Not because of obligation, not because of pity. Callum Drake had already taken too much from her. He wouldn't take her agency, too. At work, her schedule only grew heavier. She took on emergency surgeries, long shifts, anything to keep her mind distracted. And yet, the nausea, the headaches, the fatigue, they were reminders she couldn't ignore. Her body was no longer just hers. And then came Dr. Roman Wells. He was new, recently appointed head of surgery, polished, precise, endlessly confident. But beneath his perfectly measured smiles was something sharper, watchful. He took an immediate interest in Hila. Compliments over coffee, lingering glances in staff meetings, casual offers to assist in surgery that weren't really necessary. At first, she dismissed it as professional curiosity. But it didn't take long for her to notice that Roman's gaze lingered longer than it should. "You've been pushing yourself too hard," he said one evening as they left the hospital together. "Let me take you out for a drink, just one, strictly professional." She hesitated. Her instinct was to say no, but her body was tired, her mind heavier than it had been in weeks, and somewhere deep inside her, she wondered if it would feel good to be seen again, even if just for a moment. "One drink," she said finally, her voice quiet. The bar was upscale, dimly lit, filled with hushed conversations and clinking glasses. Roman was charming, effortless. He didn't talk about work. He asked about her interests, her childhood, her dreams. She found herself laughing, even smiling, before guilt began to stir in her chest. "You know," Roman said as he swirled his drink, "I heard your husband came back." Her spine straightened. She hadn't told him that. "Ex-husband," she corrected quickly. "At least he will be soon." Roman tilted his head, his tone shifting ever so slightly. "Are you sure about that?" She frowned. "What are you implying?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Callum Drake isn't the type to let go easily. A man like that, he doesn't just walk away. He circles, he waits, until he's sure you're vulnerable again." Isla's stomach tightened. "That's not true." Roman smiled like he knew something she didn't. "Just be careful. Some men only fight when they're about to lose." His words haunted her the whole ride home. Across the city, in a room filled with designer furniture and hollow memories, Callum sat stiffly on a leather armchair listening to Vivienne Cross spin her web. Her voice was soft, persuasive, touched with just the right amount of concern. She sipped her wine and said she'd seen Isla with Roman, that they looked close, very close, that they had been seeing each other for months behind his back. "You deserve to know," Vivienne whispered, reaching for his hand. "She moved on, Callum, while you were still holding on." He pulled his hand away, but the seed had been planted. By the end of the night, Hila lay awake, Roman's warning echoing in her mind. And across the city, Callum sat alone in his apartment, a hollow ache spreading through his chest. He didn't know what to believe anymore. And that was exactly how they wanted it. Rain slicked the streets in a silvery sheen as Callum pulled up to the hospital. His chest was tight, his thoughts circling like vultures. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Vivienne's words haunted him, and though part of him knew she couldn't be trusted, the image of Hila laughing with another man, touching another man, was impossible to shake. He had come to confront her, to demand the truth, even if he wasn't sure he deserved it. Inside, Isla was gathering her things, her shift finally over. She moved slowly, the fatigue in her limbs growing heavier with each day. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, distant. She hadn't decided yet when or if she would tell Callum about the baby. But the weight of that decision gnawed at her constantly. She wasn't ready to see him. Not when everything still felt so raw, so unsteady. She stepped into the hospital lobby and froze when she saw him. Callum, standing near the entrance, soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes stormy with doubt. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but urgent. Isla felt her pulse spike. "What is it?" "I saw you with Roman," he said. "I know about the two of you." Her brow furrowed. "What exactly do you think you know?" "Don't lie to me, Isla," he snapped. "Vivienne told me everything. She said you've been seeing him for months, that you moved on long before we were over." Her face drained of color. "You believe Vivienne?" Callum hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore. You've been pushing me away since the night I came back. I thought we had something, anything, but maybe I was wrong." Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with fury. "You left me, Callum. For years, you made me invisible, And the one night I ask for the truth, you vanish again. And now you think I owe you an explanation for something I didn't do?" His face twisted with pain. "Then tell me the truth." "I'm pregnant," she said, the words bursting out before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Callum's breath caught in his throat. "What?" "You heard me," she said, stepping back as her vision began to blur. "I found out a few days after that night. I wasn't going to tell you. I didn't want you to feel trapped." "You think I wouldn't want to know?" His voice cracked. "You think I'd walk away again?" "I didn't know what you'd do," she whispered. "You always saw me as a contract. I didn't want my child to be another deal you couldn't refuse." Her knees buckled suddenly, the weight of the moment overtaking her. She reached out blindly, and Callum was there in an instant, catching her before she hit the ground. "Someone help!" he shouted as nurses rushed to them. Isla's face was pale, her breath shallow. "She's pregnant," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, help her." The next moments blurred. Doctors, gurneys, orders called down sterile corridors. Callum stood frozen, helpless. One of the nurses gently touched his arm. "She's gonna be okay," she said. "She just needs rest. But now you know. It's yours." Those last two words, "it's yours," echoed louder than anything else. Callum pressed a hand to his chest, a strange kind of ache blooming beneath his ribs. A baby, a second chance, a future he never imagined, now suddenly so real. And for the first time, he realized this wasn't just about Isla anymore. It was about the life they'd created. And he couldn't let her go. Not now. The days that followed were a blur of hospital corridors, whispered updates, and quiet moments where Callum simply sat beside Isla, watching her sleep. He had never been still like this, never known how to just be present. But now, everything in him told him not to move, not to miss another moment. He had come close to losing her, and it had stripped away every illusion he'd built to protect himself. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about shareholders or public appearances. He was thinking about Isla. And the baby. When she finally opened her eyes, groggy but alert, her gaze drifted to him. He looked different. Tired, unshaven, his shirt wrinkled like he hadn't left her side. Maybe he hadn't. "You stayed," she murmured, her voice raspy. "I didn't want to be anywhere else," Callum said softly. "You scared the hell out of me." She looked away, unsure how to respond. There was too much between them, too much damage, too many silences stretched thin over years. But he wasn't pushing, not yet. "I should have told you," she whispered. I didn't want you to come back out of guilt. I wanted to believe I could do this on my own." He reached for her hand but didn't take it until she let him. "You can do this on your own, but you don't have to. Not anymore." She didn't reply, but she didn't pull away either. In the weeks that followed, Callum made changes, real ones. He canceled 2 overseas business trips, hired a deputy to run board meetings in his place. Every free moment, he was by Isla's side, bringing her food, driving her to appointments, learning how to listen without fixing. Isla was cautious. She didn't smile easily. She watched him with wary eyes, waiting for the old Callum to reappear. But slowly, the sharp edges of her suspicion began to soften, especially when she saw the way he watched the ultrasound monitor, completely still, like he was seeing a miracle, or the way he touched her lower back when they crossed the street. Subtle and instinctive, like he was finally learning to care. One night, as she rocked herself gently in the chair by the window, cradling the tiniest movement inside her, Callum sat on the floor nearby, resting his arms on her knees. "I know I don't deserve this," he said quietly. "You, the baby, but I want to be someone better. Not because I have to, because I want to." Isla's fingers grazed the top of his head, brushing back his hair. "Words won't fix what's broken, Callum." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm staying." But in the shadows of their fragile new beginning, the past still waited. Vivienne tried to call. He blocked her number. She showed up at his office one afternoon, heels clicking like thunder on the tile floor. "You'll regret this," she hissed as security escorted her out. "She'll leave you too." Callum didn't answer. He was done being manipulated. Roman, meanwhile, was facing his own unraveling. Rumors had begun to swirl at the hospital. Questions about patient privacy breaches, improper alliances with pharmaceutical reps. Isla said nothing, but when she saw him in the hallway, his smug confidence was gone. She didn't need revenge. The truth was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low and turned the city gold, Isla stood in the nursery, one hand resting on her round belly. The apartment was quiet, warm, peaceful. Callum appeared in the doorway, hesitant but hopeful. "Do you think we'll make it?" he asked. She turned, eyes meeting his. "We're not who we were," she said, "but maybe we don't have to be." He stepped forward, placing a hand over hers, their fingers resting together on the life they created. "I love you, Isla," he whispered. She didn't answer right away, but after a beat, she leaned into him and closed her eyes. It wasn't a promise, but it was a beginning. Life lesson from the story. Sometimes love doesn't begin with fireworks or fairy tales. It begins with pain, with silence, and with learning how to listen. Isla and Callum's story teaches us that relationships built on obligation can either become cages or catalysts for growth. When two people are forced into a life together without choice, what they do next defines their character. Callum had every resource, every excuse to walk away, and for a long time, he did. But when faced with the truth, the life he helped create, the woman he never truly saw, he chose to return not just with words, but with action. Isla's strength wasn't just in surviving a loveless marriage. It was in learning to reclaim her voice, to ask for what she needed, and to set boundaries. She didn't let motherhood define her, nor did she let love blind her. She allowed healing to come slowly, with caution, and taught us that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a choice that must be earned, not assumed. This story reminds us that healing takes time, and rebuilding trust takes even longer. But with honesty, presence, and humility, even the most broken relationships can find a way forward. Whether it's love, family, or friendship, what matters most is showing up, not perfectly, but truly. Where are you watching this story from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional and powerful African stories that touch the heart.